It is a constantly shifting battle. All summer, we've shown you why leaders in the district say we are under siege by manufactured drugs that may look like marijuana but act more like PCP.
Well, now D.C. police say their success in pulling the drugs from store shelves has led to a new battle on our streets. Tonight, Tisha Thompson and the News 4 I-Team take you undercover to see how the deals are going down.
The deals happen in a heartbeat. Blink and you'll miss it. You're watching what police call D.C.'s open-air drug market, which they say became even more dangerous this summer because of synthetic drugs.
It's all about the supply and demand.
In exclusive interviews with the News 4 I-Team, the men and women on the forefront of D.C.'s new drug war are talking.
We take away their ability to make money.
About how we ended up here on a street corner when just 5 years ago the drugs could be found in convenience stores throughout the city.
And it was just blatant out in the open. The brands would be advertised by being put up in the windows, and you could go up and point to the brand you wanted.
Acting Lieutenant Andrew Struhar is the man in charge of taking down drug deals for D.C. police. He says his team started cracking down on stores in 2013, just after the federal government outlawed the first batch of synthetics.
Frankly, some of them just don't know what they have in their stores, the dangers.
Natalie Luttaway with the D.C. Attorney General's office says they first tried to educate store owners by warning them to stop selling the shiny packets. But some stores decided to keep selling by hiding their illegal stashes.
We'd find it in Slim Jim boxes, candy boxes under the counter.
The News 4 I-Team obtained these police evidence photos to show you how stores tried to use trap doors in their floors and other unconventional hiding places.
We would find them in the purses, behind water heaters, in filing cabinets in the back office.
Luttaway says the D.C. government beefed up its nuisance law, allowing them to bring heavy fines and shut down stores like Ada's Electronics in Bloomingdale and Smiley's on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue.
It allows us to move forward with a case without having to first prove that the substance is a, quote, illegal synthetic drug.
But so far, no one's gone to prison. To bring a criminal case, acting U.S. Attorney Vincent Cohen says he needs to prove the drugs contain illegal chemicals, requiring complicated testing.
We're finding a number of these synthetic cannabinoids that we're confiscating that are actually on the registry, and those are the cases that we're bringing forward.
Cohen says he just got back the first batch of test results from the DEA's forensic chemists, which will allow him to try the first round of criminal cases this winter.
We will lock you up for, obviously, distribution. We can lock you up also for possession with intent to distribute.
Those cases include an employee at a Georgia Avenue market accused with hiding Bizarro and Scooby snacks inside a broken ATM machine, a clerk at a store on Benning Road where detectives seized more than 2,300 packets of K2, Hookah Blast, and other brand names from inside the store's safe. The biggest case, last month's seizure of more than $2 million worth of Bizarro packets intercepted by Struhar and his team from a storage facility in Northwest D.C.
And it was truly a huge amount.
Struhar says they're now focusing their efforts on shutting down these big suppliers before they get to the stores.
Making undercover buys used to be a very simple process. It was not challenging.
Struhar says dealers have abandoned the packets and are now hand-rolling the drugs to sell as individual cigarettes or blunts. Our undercover cameras caught dozens of these suspicious deals. In between the illegal pill sales and users sniffing white powder, we saw cash trading hands for these singles. Struhar says it's now harder than ever for police to tell if they're witnessing contraband tobacco sales, marijuana, or synthetic deals.
That was kind of a worst-case scenario for us.
He says his team has arrested more than 105 people for these street-level sales since June.
And the problem is that that person's back out the next day doing the same thing, and you're not systemically addressing the problem. And so we've tried to really address the dealers more than just the buyers.
He wants you to know the police are watching, hoping these single cigarettes will lead them to the next big bust. You may have noticed nearly everyone in our video is African American, and we did too, and we asked the police about that, and they told us that synthetic drugs are hitting the black community in the district particularly hard. But the DEA and other law enforcement say once you get outside of the district, everybody, users, buyers, it's all demographics, and they're ranging anywhere from their teens and into their 70s.
And is it not a serious problem that the arrest police are making, or more and more of them, from people who use this stuff who just go absolutely nuts. I mean, berserk.
I have asked over and over again, does it feel like it's getting more and more violent? Because it feels to us like it's gotten more and more violent. And there's definitely, when the drugs first came out in 2009, 2010, they did seem to have more of a marijuana type impact on people, where people tended to mellow out. And that's where the word synthetic drugs, or I'm sorry, synthetic marijuana came from. But as the chemicals change, as the molecules get tinkered with, they do seem to become more violent. But police say they've seen violent reactions from the get-go. That this is new to us, but for police, it's been going on like this for a couple years.
Then what's the attraction? Is it the low price?
It is the low price. They have found in Colorado, for instance, where marijuana is now legal, that the taxes and the competition has made marijuana increase in price. So synthetic drugs have suddenly become an issue in Colorado because it's cheaper. And you can get a packet for anywhere between $20 to $40, but the price popped this summer, MPD says. It got all the way up to $40 a packet, and that's why they think you're seeing the singles.
And they don't even know what they're taking.
They have no idea, and the police don't.
What's really in those synthetic drugs, and why are they causing so much trouble in our region? Tisha Thompson and the News 4 I team got exclusive access into a drug lab in Virginia to find out. Tisha?
That's right, Doreen. The DEA told me its newest numbers show D.C. had 439 ambulance runs for synthetic drug overdoses in June alone. So we went to their lab to show you what synthetic drugs look like, how they're made, and why those on the front lines of this new battle say it's unlike anything they've ever seen before.
White Lady, Mr. Nice Guy, Sour D, and Plur. With their shiny packaging and intriguing names, it's hard for some to take them seriously. But for Jill Head, these little packets may be the scariest thing she's ever seen come through her lab.
I want people to know that there is no association with these drugs to marijuana.
Head and her team at the Drug Enforcement Administration's Special Testing and Research Laboratory in Virginia analyze and identify all of the illicit drugs seized by DEA agents throughout the world. Before 2009, chemists here say they typically only saw about a half dozen types of drugs, like cocaine, heroin, meth, and marijuana.
This is a really strange phenomenon.
But since then, Head says they've been flooded with more than 300 varieties of synthetic drugs.
Probably at the highest, we've been seeing 1 to 2 new synthetic drugs per week.
This is what synthetic drugs really look like. Despite all of their fancy packaging, Head says they all start out as a white powder manufactured in Chinese laboratories that, to the naked eye, looks identical to cocaine.
Bath salts, Flakka, Spice, Scooby Snacks, Molly, they all look like this. They're all powders.
The DEA groups them by what they look like under a microscope. One class, typically sold as Molly or ecstasy, stays in powder form or gets pressed into a pill. Bath salts and Flakka are in a different class and have a crystal-like appearance. But most of these packets contain plant leaves dosed with the most common class called synthetic cannabinoids.
So what happens is the drug is then added to a solvent and dissolved, the way that you would dissolve sugar into iced tea, make a solution, and then it's added to the plant material. There's various methods for mixing, such as spraying or mix in a bathtub and a cement mixer.
She says the mixing is often uneven, meaning some batches are more concentrated and can lead to overdoses. Head says these K2 and Spice packets are some of the earliest samples they've processed in the lab.
We don't really see a lot of those anymore.
She says Scooby Snacks, another early brand name, is still widely available, but warns the label on the outside has nothing to do with the chemicals she's found on the inside.
We can analyze one and it'll have one drug in it, and even from the same store, the same seizure, right next to it could be another packet that has a completely different drug.
The DEA says do not be fooled by labels like Fruit Punch promising it's lab certified with no banned chemicals, or DeEvil's claim it's cannabinoid free and DEA compliant. Head says none of it is true. They're all illegal synthetic drugs. Which is why Head doesn't just analyze synthetic drugs. She's one of the very few allowed to actually make them in the United States, trying to give the DEA a jump start on what's coming next in this new drug war.
The scariest thing to me is how much is unknown and how much people don't know. They're completely unknown. It's like roulette.
The DEA gave us a breakdown of what each of the new variations they've uncovered look like, even at the molecular level, and how they keep evolving atom by atom. You can see it by going to our NBC Washington app and clicking on Investigations. Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.
First tonight, staggering new evidence of the impact synthetic drugs are having on our city.
And the impact they could have on you, even if you've never touched them. Tonight, Tisha Thompson and the News 4 I-Team take you behind the scenes to see just how synthetics are putting more pressure than ever on an already strained fire and EMS system.
Washington, D.C. is a big city with big city problems. In less than 1 hour, a car crash, a fire, and yet another stabbing, all in Northeast. Captain Roger St. Laurent spends his days literally running from one emergency to another. But he and his team say they've never seen anything take a toll on their EMS system like synthetic drugs.
As a 25-year veteran of this department, it's as scary as anything that we've seen.
The News 4 I-Team obtained new numbers showing a record number of emergency calls for synthetic overdoses in September. D.C. is now averaging at least 20 runs a day, with as many as 34 on particularly bad days. To put that into perspective, the city averages less than 2 heroin overdoses per day.
We began seeing some disturbing clusters of mass overdoses, which are fairly unusual.
Chief Rafael Saada says it started this summer near the Federal City homeless shelter when calls came in for nearly a dozen people collapsing.
But they're spread out a 2 or 3 block radius, and they're not presenting all at the same time. They're presenting an hour, 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours after the initial 911 dispatch.
He says as these clusters kept occurring throughout the summer, they realized they were sending multiple crews to the same location for the same problem.
And so how we've adapted or evolved our operational response, the crews now are trained to be alert to a pattern of overdoses. We'll send a battalion chief and an EMS supervisor, establish incident command, and essentially treat it as a slow-motion mass casualty event.
In other words, DC FEMS is now responding to synthetic overdoses the same way they react to a mass shooting or a metro accident. Captain St. Laurent is one of those EMS supervisors. We spent the day with him as he crisscrossed the city responding to drug overdoses.
How long ago you smoked?
Police tell St. Laurent they suspect he's on K2.
15. Now, you're too old to be doing stupid crap like K2.
Handcuffed, they will transport him to a local hospital where he'll probably stay for at least 2 days until the drug works its way out of his system.
We've had several incidents where crews have had to call in a 1033, which is our emergency assistance call, because they were being assaulted by the patient.
He says as a result, they're now sending multiple police and EMS crews to suspected synthetic cases, further straining an already stressed out system that's had a 40% increase in EMS transports in just 7 years.
This is a very, very, very significant operational impact, and because it's also using a lot of resources, it then impacts the availability of EMS resources for other life-threatening or time-sensitive emergencies as well.
Like this stabbing call that comes in moments after the overdose.
40-ish-year-old male, multiple stab wound, abdomen and chest.
It will become a murder scene before the day ends. A brutal reminder of what is at stake each time an ambulance gets called away for yet another synthetic drug overdose.
The deputy chief says the city made a record-breaking 611 responses for synthetic overdoses in September alone. That is 10 times more runs than they made for heart attacks or strokes. It's even higher than all of the car accidents they responded to in the city. Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.
A very public murder on a metro train in D.C. That crime now has lawmakers working together to fight back against constantly changing synthetic drugs. As Tisha Thompson and the News 4 I-Team report, the problem is, how do you put people in jail for selling drugs that aren't technically illegal yet?
It was the moment when everything changed.
First up at 5 tonight, that teenager charged in the deadly attack on a metro train.
Kevin Sutherland had recently graduated from American University. His Twitter full of pictures taken by someone thrilled to be living at the center of American politics.
That Jasper Spires should be held without bond this afternoon.
But the pictures suddenly stop on July 4th. Sutherland was on this metro train filled with passengers heading to the fireworks when police say this man, Jasper Spires, hopped on board. In this surveillance video, prosecutors say you can see Spires throw away a knife he used to stab Sutherland 30 to 40 times in front of nearly a dozen other horrified passengers.
The reason I'm really sitting here is because it looks like his assailant, got to go through the trial and all that, but it looks like his assailant was probably high on these synthetics.
Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes knew Sutherland for years, first as a teenager volunteering on his campaign, and later hired Sutherland as a college intern.
It's one of those things where if it can happen to Kevin, it can happen to anybody.
Himes agreed to sit down for our interview if he could have this man by his side, Congressman Charlie Dent from Pennsylvania.
In my area, we had several overdoses and some deaths.
Dent is a Republican. Himes is a Democrat. But in a rare moment of congressional accord, they say Sutherland's death brought them together to fix a federal law used to prosecute synthetic drug cases.
This is what makes synthetic drug cases so tricky. This is one of the original chemicals used in the synthetic drug packets, spice. But just 4 weeks after this was outlawed, chemists tweaked the side chain by doing that. That's all it took to make a new and now legal drug.
Fast forward to 2015. The DEA says it's now identified more than 300 new chemicals in synthetic narcotics. But we found only 37 are actually on the government's list of illegal drugs.
The manufacturers and distributors of this poison have figured out a way to reformulate these compounds.
Dent has introduced an unusual bill for Congress, a long list of more than 200 molecular compounds connected to synthetics he says the DEA wants to outlaw. The bill also tries to make it easier for prosecutors to bring cases against similar drugs, even if they're not on this list. But the University of Maryland's Dr. Eric Wish, one of the nation's leading experts on drug abuse, worries laws like this won't fix the problem.
You know that game of whack-a-mole? As soon as you identify a drug and you put it on that list, they come up with a new one. So you're never going to be able to keep up with it.
That's why Virginia recently made a major change to its drug laws.
In 2015, thus far, we've probably seen 30 to 40 different compounds.
Linda Jackson is in charge of Virginia's forensic drug labs. She says this drug is on the state's schedule of illegal drugs. But even though this one is not, under Virginia's new law, it's still illegal because they have the same backbone.
There are numerous different places on that molecule where you could add or change that molecule, and so it would be hundreds of different possibilities that a chemist could create different drugs that would then still be included as being scheduled in Virginia.
It's a different approach from what Dent and Himes are trying to pass on the Hill, but the two congressmen are confident their bill will work.
This will shut it down for a very long time. Now, look, I'm sure they're going to keep trying, but we're going to make it a lot harder for them.
There's a bill before the D.C. Council that would make the district's drug law similar to what Virginia is now doing. The lawyer for the man accused of killing Kevin Sutherland says his client is innocent, that he's not the man seen in the surveillance video, and his next court date is January 29th. Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.
Even younger kids in our area are being caught up in this new war on synthetic drugs.
Agents tell the News 4 I-Team they've seen children as young as 11 overdose on synthetic drugs. Tisha Thompson and the News 4 I-Team shows you what parents and local schools are doing to get to kids before the drugs get to them.
It is one of the very worst moments any family can face, saying goodbye to a dying child.
Mommy is cutting some of your hair off so that we have it forever.
Veronica and Devin Eckhart are sharing these gut-wrenching videos of their last moments with their son Connor.
I'm just sorry that I don't get to have more time with you.
They say he was just 19 years old when he died from taking a single hit of the synthetic drug spice.
One hit changed everything.
The Eckharts established a foundation in their son's honor to teach kids that these synthetics might look like marijuana, but are nothing at all like the plant.
Does anyone know if there's actually a difference between marijuana and synthetic marijuana?
That's the same message.
No? Okay, well, there is.
Winchester Police Lieutenant Wally Stottlemyre is trying to pound home to this class of 7th graders.
It will kill you. Maybe not the first time you use it, maybe not the second time, but eventually it will kill you. When I see what it has done to our community, how our communities have become deteriorating because of these drugs, the effects that these synthetic drugs have on the user is very scary, because every time that you ingest one of these drugs, no matter what the quantity or what it is, you run the risk of death. I am a narcotics cop.
Teachers here say these kids know to stay away from heroin.
They're scared to death of heroin.
But they're hearing that the kids are already experimenting with synthetics.
Kids are wonderful because they think they're invincible and they think it's not going to happen to them. I can smoke a little weed and it won't go any further. So making that connection, I think, is a priority.
The News 4i team found school districts like D.C. are already teaching about synthetic drugs, while others, like Prince George's County Public Schools, tell us they plan to add them to the curriculum soon.
They're marketed to kids, and kids think of them as synthetic marijuana.
Dr. Eric Wish at the Center for Substance Abuse Research says by calling it synthetic marijuana, too many kids mistakenly think it's somehow safer than other drugs.
No one should be using that term. If marijuana is okay, most synthetics, it's a good name, right? It's a good thing. You're playing Russian roulette when you take it. That's why it's so dangerous.
Synthetic drugs are man-made. They're not grown. You don't plant them in your backyard in a garden and put Miracle Grow on them and they grow.
Lieutenant Stottlemyre says he personally asked Winchester's school system to talk to all of its middle schoolers because their small town has already had one fatality and at least 2 teenagers permanently brain damaged from synthetic drugs.
She smoked it one time. Okay, overdosed, went straight to the hospital, and is now basically paralyzed from the neck down.
It's the kind of lesson Connor's parents say is vital to keep what happened to their family from ever happening to yours.
If Connor had known how dangerous these are, things would be different.
We've created a special website where kids and their parents can read about the different types of synthetic drugs that are out there right now. From Scooby Snacks to Bizarro to bath salts and Flakka, including N-Bomb. We've got them all there. See what they look like and the violent things doctors say they will do to your body. You can find it all on our NBC Washington homepage and our NBC Washington app. Tisha Thompson, News 4i team.